Hello hockey fans and welcome back to another video. To many of you watching this, the name Ivan Fedotov might not mean much to you, if anything at all. After all, the Russian netminder was a 7th round draft pick all the way back in 2015. He has spent his entire pro hockey career in his native country, and he has only just signed his first NHL contract at the age of 25. He's not exactly Andrei Vasilevsky, you know. However, to say that Fedetov has experienced a rollercoaster ride of events recently would be one hell of an understatement. Whether it was his detainment by the Russian military, his admittance to hospital shortly after, or his assignment to the Navy, Fedetov seems to have become entangled in quite the controversy through no fault of his own. But what's happened to Fedotov? Why has he been under the spotlight recently, and why are his experiences a possible sign of things to come for his fellow countrymen too? Well, let's take a look at what we know as of right now and try to figure it out, shall we? So in today's video, allow me to explain why Russian NHL players are in serious trouble. Now, in order to understand what's taken place, let's start by looking at who Ivan Fedotov is and his career in hockey up until this point. Born in Finland but hailing from Russia, Ivan Fedotov was drafted 188th overall by the Philadelphia Flyers in the 2015 NHL entry draft thanks to his 21-10-7 record, his 1.95 goals against average, and his .911 save percentage in 41 games with Reaktor Nizhny of the MHL, Russia's junior league. From there, Fedotov would spend the next 4 years bouncing between various different leagues back home before finally earning a more permanent position in the KHL, as he joined Traktor Chelyabinsk for the 2019-20 KHL season. After spending the next 2 years with the Traktor organisation, and after posting a 24-23-5 record in 58 games with the team, Fedotov would take his talents elsewhere in the league, as he joined KHL powerhouse CSKA Moscow for the recent 21-22 season. Though he would join his third organisation in the last 4 years, Fedotov would produce quite the debut year for his new side. Not only would he register a 14-10-2 record, a 2.00 goals against average, and a .919 save percentage in 26 regular season games, the former 7th round draft pick would earn a place on the KHL's first All-Star team, would be named the league's best goaltender that year, and would even lift his first championship too, as he helped Moscow clinch the 2022 Gagarin Cup and lift their second trophy in the last 3 years. Oh, and that's not even mentioning his silver medal during the 2022 Winter Olympics. Talk about a breakout season, eh, folks? If all of that wasn't impressive enough though, Fedotov's performance would also earn him his first contract overseas, as on May 7th, 2022, the 25-year-old signed a 1-year entry-level contract with the Flyers worth $1.1 million for the upcoming 22-23 NHL season. So now that we know who Ivan Fedotov is, what's happened to him? Why has he been the subject of controversy? Well, earlier this week, on July 1st, 2022, reports emerged claiming that Ivan Fedotov had been arrested by Russian authorities outside the Kupchino Ice Arena in St. Petersburg. According to an article by ESPN, Fedotov had been filming a documentary with a TV crew at the arena, but he was detained by authorities as he left the facility. Shortly after he was detained, it was revealed that Fedotov had been taken to a military enlistment centre over suspicions that he was attempting to avoid compulsory military service. These suspicions were raised as the Russian Military Prosecutor's Office believed that they had sufficient grounds to consider Fedotov, quote, an army evader, though Fedotov's lawyer denied these accusations and stated that his client hadn't evaded military service. However, things would seemingly go from bad to worse. Several hours after his detainment, it was revealed that Fedotov had been taken to a military hospital, where he would be admitted into the facility and where he would remain for the rest of the night. While the circumstances surrounding his detainment and his subsequent hospitalization had raised immediate concerns over Fedotov's well-being, a lawyer representing Fedotov claimed that his client had supposedly been taken to hospital with stress-induced gastritis. However, neither the lawyer himself nor any member of Fedotov's family had been allowed to visit the netminder while he was in hospital, which raised further questions surrounding surrounding both Fedotov's condition as well as the legitimacy of his detainment by Russian authorities. Though news of Fedotov's status would go radio silent for several days, an update would finally be revealed the following week. On July 5th, 2022, Fedotov's agent JP Barry revealed that his client had been stationed at a remote military base in northern Russia. According to Russian newspaper Sports Express, Fedetov was photographed at a naval base in Severodvinsk along Russia's north coast, and he was stationed there as a member of the Russian Navy, though there have been conflicting reports as to Fedotov's exact location at this point in time. Now, it's worth mentioning that Russia attempted to conscript more than 130,000 men for a year of military service this past spring, and while many Russians can attempt to use medical, educational, or athletic exemptions to delay or even avoid the draft entirely, these requests can be ignored by the state. Since Fedetov had played for Moscow last season, and since CSKA has traditional ties to the Russian military, members of Moscow's roster are considered to be active military personnel during their respective tenures with the team, so Fedetov had likely been fulfilling his military service while playing on Moscow's roster. However, once he signed his deal with Philly and he began making plans to move overseas, it's likely that he was no longer eligible to serve in this way, and he was detained by the Russian military as a result. That said, if Fedotov spent the entire 21-22 season with Moscow, and if compulsory military service lasts 1 year, then surely Fedotov has already served his time, and he is free to take his talents wherever he wants in the hockey world. However, since the KHL season lasts less than a full calendar year, perhaps Fedotov still has a few months left to serve, and that is why he's been detained? The circumstances surrounding this situation are incredibly unclear, but it all seems a little too suspicious, you know. Now, I imagine that this whole situation has arisen for one of two reasons. Either A, Fedotov still has some time left of his military service, and Russia wants to make sure that he fulfills it before he moves to the NHL, or B, CSKA Moscow are upset with Fedotov that he has signed a contract with an NHL team, and they have decided to punish him for not re-signing with them instead. When asked about the Fedotov case, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said that, quote, "We have a draft in line with the law, so any emotional commentaries would be utterly inappropriate," while also saying that, quote, "There are certain reasons for deferments and various ways of undergoing military service for athletes." Well, given that Fedotov spent the entirety of last season with Moscow, and given that he has been banished to northern Russia less than 2 months after signing his first NHL contract, it kinda sounds to me like CSKA didn't want Fedotov to leave, and they are making an example of him under the guise of military service. But maybe that's just me. As the Fedotov situation reached somewhat of a conclusion, another player would be mentioned under similar circumstances. Only this time, it was one of the top Russian players in the NHL. Less than 24 hours after Fedotov's update on July 6th, it was reported that Minnesota Wild star Karil Kaprizzov had fled his homeland and was wanted in Russia for allegedly buying a military ID back in 2017. However, these claims appear to be little more than rumours, as several sources, including Minnesota Wild general manager Bill Guerin, have stated that Kaprizzov didn't purchase a fake ID, he was still at home in Russia, and that he is doing just fine spending time with his friends and family. So at least this one appears to be a false alarm. Just wish I could say the same about Fedotov, you know. I'm currently editing this video, and I've just seen that Michael Russo from The Athletic has reported that Kaprizzov has attempted to leave Russia and re-enter America on 2 separate occasions, once via a layover from Dubai, and the other through the Caribbean islands instead. However, the forward has been supposedly rejected on both occasions, and he has been forced to return home to Russia as a result. So even though he adamantly denies the military ID rumours, and even though he has supposedly been exempt from military service due to being a student, Kaprizzov is clearly worried about what might happen next, and it's very obvious that he wants to leave Russia as soon as possible. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I imagine that we will be hearing plenty of similar stories from other Russian NHL players over the coming weeks. After all, it sure sounds like Russia is trying to do everything they can to keep their players at home, whether they want to be there or not. So what's next for Ivan Fedotov? Where does he go from here? Well, at the time of this recording, it seems as if the netminder shall be stationed in northern Russia until his military service is deemed complete. Either that, or he somehow deserts from the navy and tries to flee overseas instead. But given the serious risk that could pose to both himself and his close family, I certainly wouldn't blame him for playing it safe and avoiding any drastic decisions. Remember, this is Russia we're talking about here. They do things a lot differently over there than we do in the West. But what about his hockey career? Could Fedetov return to CSKA Moscow and fulfill the rest of his military service with them instead? Well, considering that he tried to leave the team once before, and considering that the organisation may have orchestrated this entire situation because of it, I imagine that this bridge has already been burned, you know. That said, I wouldn't be surprised if the team used this option as a way to convince Fedetov to spend another year with the roster. After all, playing a second season with a championship contender sure sounds far better than serving at a remote military base in the north of the country, folks? Now, Fedotov's situation appears to be a unique incident as of right now, and hopefully we don't see anything else quite as extreme anytime soon. But this controversy has raised some serious concerns surrounding the status of Russian NHL players moving forwards. Given the current situation in Russia and their continued isolation from the Western world, will these players be allowed to return to the NHL for the upcoming 22-23 season, or will they be detained like Fedotov was and be conscripted into the Russian military? After all, the off-season is in full swing now, and many of these players have returned home to spend time with their families. Will they be allowed to travel back to North America, or will they be conscripted and forced to serve instead? Not only that, it's possible that Fedotov's detainment will serve as a warning to other Russian players, as the possibility of being arrested by the military or blacklisted from their native hockey community could scare a number of players who are considering trying their luck overseas into staying at home instead. After all, the Kaprizzov rumours seem to have spawned as a direct result of Fedotov's recent incident. This situation is probably making even the best Russian players think twice about spending the off-season back home. Just imagine how terrifying it might be for a depth player or a prospect who is looking to play outside of the country next year. Sure, some of these claims might sound a little crazy to most of you watching this, but I think there is a legitimate fear within the hockey world that Russian NHL players might not be allowed to return next season, either due to them being forced to remain in their homeland or them being forbidden from leaving their own country. After all, it wasn't that long ago when the Soviet Union forbid their players from leaving their country, and Russians had to risk their lives by defecting from the Soviet Union just to take their talents overseas. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I never want this situation to return. Both the players themselves and the sport of hockey as a whole are much better off without it, you know. Politics aside, this really isn't good, okay? Whether Russian players are able to return next season, or whether they are forced to stay at home remains to be seen. But regardless of what happens next over the coming months, here's hoping that Ivan Fedotov is safe, he can complete his military service sooner rather than later, and he can finally make the move to North America in order to compete for a roster spot in the NHL. After all, given his turbulent journey this past week, he certainly deserves some good news. And on that note, I'm going to end today's video. That was a look at why Russian NHL players could be in serious trouble. What do you guys think about Ivan Fedotov's situation, or the effect that it could have on his fellow countrymen moving forwards? Do you think that Fedotov will make it to North America for the upcoming 22-23 season, or do you think he will be forced to remain in Russia instead? Let me know in the comments below, I would love to hear what you guys think. But thank you very much for watching, guys, I hope you have enjoyed. Please feel free to like, subscribe, share, or watch some of my other videos. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye! A big thank you to Clayton Hallam, Drew Fawcett, Houston NG, Lucas Gates, Raquel and Worthless Pieces for helping support this video via Patreon. If you too want to help support the channel a little bit further and get a shout out at the end of every future video, make sure you head over to patreon.com/oddmanrush and become a patron today.